Happy New Year and welcome to Tuesdays with Lloyds. Launched in September 2020, Tuesdays with Lloyds has been connecting our stakeholders in Americas with those in London, from latest updates by class of business to Syndicate showcase. We have covered a wide range of topics in the past 15 months. For this new season of 2022, we are taking the audience into a deeper dive into Lloyd's marketplace. And we'll start with the people. Lloyd's is well known for its underwriting expertise, its leadership innovation, and the very fact that we are a market where over 90 syndicates work together to help our customers. What is most special about Lloyd's is the people. The Lloyd's underwriters and Lloyd's brokers are the heart and soul of our market and what makes Lloyd's so special. Today, we're so honored to have two special leaders to showcase one of the two most dynamic leaders in the Lloyd's market. On paper, these two people are so different. One has been a broker throughout her career. She was the very first female founder of a Lloyd's intermediary. She's a woman who has been rising to the top of her career at a time when diversity is not even common. She's a big part of Lloyd's Council, the driving force to lead the market towards a brighter and braver future. The other is a star underwriter. He and his team has spearheaded the pioneering of sharing economy solutions at Lloyd's market, even before sharing economy became a well-known concept. He's a leader who redefines the meaning of collaboration between clients, brokers, and underwriters. He's a big part of the group of Lloyds who never stop pushing the boundaries. And yet, these two leaders have so much in common. They're both passionate about helping clients and creating innovative solutions. They're both trailblazers who are inspirational to future leaders. And they're both always willing to help and lead others. Without further ado, please welcome Vicky Carter, Chairman of Global Capital Solutions International at Carpenter, and Deputy Chair of Lloyd's Council. Chris Moore, Head of ibott and Deputy Head of Casualty at Apollo Syndicate 1969. Vicky and Chris, please take away.
Thanks, Enya.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be with you and excited about this session. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Vicky. Yeah, we have a great topic to discuss in New Risk, New World, New Approach. I think we could probably speak about this for about 4 to 5 hours, let alone 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I actually put a poll out on LinkedIn last week. And I think it'd be a good idea just to kick off and ask your answer to this question. The question was, what innovation in insurance are you most excited about right now? And the options were parametric triggers, new products for new mobility, algorithmic underwriting, and new tech data for claims. What would have been the one that would have sprung out for you?
Innovation, basically. The word innovation springs out to me. So I think this industry has to be much better at innovating. We've got to learn to innovate a lot quicker. We've got to find, more products. There's a desperate need to find products. I mean, we all know there's a big gap. There's an insurance gap out there. We've seen that, around pandemic. So I think the whole area of innovation, whether it's on the servicing side, whether it's product development, all around technology, claim servicing, they're all equally important parts of the industry. But if we just dive in, Chris, one at a time, just briefly to the ones you mentioned. So I think parametrics is a fascinating area. I mean, I've been involved in 2 schemes of parametric development very recently. One was the Lloyd's initiative around trying to create a parametric product for COVID. So really reaching out to the UK sort of SME and micro SME market. It proved incredibly challenging, as I'm sure people can appreciate. But parametric is a good product, a great product for providing cover where, you know, there's a lot of challenge around producing a cover and triggers to match. So the other one we worked on was a earthquake parametric in New Zealand. So again, it enabled individuals to buy additional cover in New Zealand, which has been difficult, as you can imagine, following the Christchurch earthquake. It was challenging for some people to be able to buy cover. And this was a solution, a smart solution for developing a product that was triggered on the amount of vibrations and speed of vibrations of the quake. So very much in a parametric framework. So I see parametrics as a very exciting area of development globally, not just in sort of the first world countries, but some of the emerging economies as well we've seen, especially around, you know, agriculture, crop development, things like that. Moving on to data technology, particularly around claims. I mean, claims is obviously the key part of our industry. If people can't collect, they're not going to buy insurance. We've seen that, you know, Lloyds is very focused on providing quick, fast solutions for claims payments. A huge proportion of Lloyds claims are under £5,000, and that they can be put onto a fully automated system that's going to save a huge amount of time and cost. So I see that being a key part. And if you look at new businesses and digitalized businesses, one of the areas where they want to digitalize is around the claims area, to get claims paid to customers quicker. So I think, again, that's another very exciting area, an area of focus for development for the industry. New products for mobility. Well, there's a whole interesting area, and I think that's probably an area which would be best you talking about and what you're doing at ibott. And certainly, you know, obviously being involved with you on the capital side, I've had a fantastic insight to what you're developing there. So I'll let you sort of touch on that. But I think there's a whole area of automation and AI around mobility, whether it's around, you know, in cars, providing, you know, cover to the likes of Uber drivers through, you know, a really advanced AI. I'm not just talking about telematics. I'm talking about things beyond telematics into things like cargo and transit and transportation. So a huge area of interest around that, and building systems in can provide real-time information back on that, and better risk selection. Algorithmic underwriting, again, I see that's something that's going to develop in the future. You've seen the success of Key, which was created by Brit. They've had, you know, tremendous success with that Syndicate. And I think, you know, if you look at capital is getting much more discerning in how it comes into the industry. And I think what it wants to do is to select the best quality underwriters to sit behind. So providing these algorithmic underwriting, again, is a faster way to access high quality risks for discerning capital. And I can see that there will be a lot more in the way of algorithmic underwriting in the future. It's a way of being able to really analyze risk better, a lot faster, and provide coverage quicker. So again, a very, very exciting area of the industry, and I think there'll be a lot more development around that. So they're really the four areas that you've touched on. What are your views? You set the poll.
Yeah,
love to hear.
I was really happy with the answer that came out of the poll. If I could have designed the result, I'd have designed exactly the result I got. I got the winner, but by a tiny margin, was new products and new mobility. So that's probably linked to my connections, given that's what the focus is for ibott. But all of the different options got at least 20% of the vote. So it was really close, each of them. And I think what that's really telling is that there's innovation happening across the insurance industry in all sorts of different verticals. And I think that's likely because we've kind of changed a mindset as an industry, and I've definitely felt it within Lloyds. I've certainly felt it within Apollo. You know, we were very set in our ways for a long time, where we had embraced this buyer-supplier type model. Here's our products. Would you like them? Here they are. They're off the shelf. Take it or leave it. And in a softer cycle, we're really competing on price. Whereas I see there's been this transition where clients have come to people saying, look, I need something different. My world has changed. It's been flipped upside down. My business model has changed. We're going through this transition as a business. We need a different type of insurance product. And so what I've seen insurers do is transition to this client-first mentality and really this strategic partnership type approach. And so when you start putting the client first in all of your mindset and the way that you approach the business, you can see how these different innovations come. So parametric triggers, it's trying to solve a better solution, right? In many cases, it's quicker claims payments. It's getting cash flow to people quicker because it's really desperate for their business when there's a disaster that happens, right? So it's really changing that service level product to make it a better one. If you look at new products and new mobility, there's no point looking at autonomous vehicles and even electric vehicles with the same auto products that we have, because they're completely different risks, in my opinion, and need a completely different approach. And so again, the innovation to create those new products is coming from a client demand. The algorithmic underwriting it's all about increasing your service, increasing, for me, the efficiency of us as a business. I know that a lot of underwriters and a lot of other people in the industry might be fearful of algorithmic underwriting. It's something that I think is fantastic as an underwriter, because I view it as somewhat of it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think there will always be a human underwriter or a human person in the chain. But for me, if I sit there and say in a normal, traditional way of doing business, I might be able to look effectively at 20 risks in a week through an algorithmic underwriting approach that does a layer of triage for me, for example, that says, well, I know this is ibott's appetite. We look at these types of risks and this type of demographic and this type of characteristic. If that then narrows my funnel to say that I can look at 200 and narrows it down to pick and select for me through that algorithm, the 20 risks that are most likely to fit my appetite, I should be imploring that and welcoming that sort of change into business, because it makes me more efficient. It gets me access to the risks that I want to write. Again, for the clients that are looking for that coverage, it's connecting them with an underwriter quicker and more efficiently, and lowering the cost of us as a business, which hopefully we pass on to our customers. So again, in all these areas, I think if you have that client-first mentality, this is where that innovation is coming from, and no more so in the new tech data for claims. That's something that I'm extremely passionate about, because for me, the data drives the underwriting, and that claims data is so rich. That's what powers our pricing. And we're employing lots of actuaries and data scientists in our team because of the wealth of that data available. And our clients are looking for us to maybe be a bit more transparent with how we're modeling risk, how we're taking that claims data to come up with our pricing, and work with them actively to control it, right? So a good example would be if we go through somebody's loss runs, right? And let's take a mobility type risk. I might look and say, right, I want to go do some data mining into this to see, let's have a look at all the claims that involve some speeding. We can control those claims through new tech innovation in telematics and remove those drivers that are doing that, or control that element of risk. Can we look at every loss that's caused by a left turn? We can change that by doing new innovative risk-based routing that avoids as many left turns as possible, and that will impact the insurance risk. So again, I think it's that innovation. What's exciting about for me is it's coming from that client first type culture, and it's hitting every element of the industry, whether it's claims, actuarial, compliance, underwriting. It's across all functions. So I was happy with the poll.
Yeah, the poll was really interesting. I think the other thing that's interesting is I think we've got to adapt to how the world is changing. I mean, if you look at how the younger generation, they look at life totally different from, say, our generation. They want things quicker. They're much more hungry for information and data. They don't want to go out and have to buy something on, say, an annual basis. So they're going to use something, whether it's a car or a bicycle or whatever they use. They want to do it maybe by the hour. We've got to adapt to that way of living. And, if we don't digitalize our business, we're going to get disrupted. There are going to be companies out there going to come in and disrupt. Now, I know companies have tried to, disrupt our industry and haven't been particularly successful to date, because it is a complex industry. But, we can't rely and sit back and just think, well, they're never going to disrupt, because they will find a way through it. So I think where we are is seeing an incredible transition of this industry at the moment as we move into this sort of much more digitalized area. change in skill sets. So I think, companies have got to look at how they adapt to this, whether they like it or not. Some companies are going to be more advanced. Some companies are going to be less advanced. But you've got to look at upskilling staff and changes, bringing in people from completely different skill sets, which I think is interesting. And those people can help teach, the incumbents of how they adapt to a digitalized world. So I think there's, huge amounts of excitement, interest, anticipation in the industry. And I think what we've seen with some of the more advanced sort of digitalized businesses and some of the new, and I'm sure we'll move on to that when we get talking about things like the lab, which I think is an area of huge interest at Lloyd's. There's some fantastic businesses coming out, and they are adapting really advanced technology and providing some great products which can be sold through the distribution chains that Lloyd's and generally the insurance market provides. So anybody coming in at the moment is probably one of the most exciting times to be in this industry.
I think that I'm going to pick up on a word that you used. I think sometimes can cause issues amongst certain people, and it's the word disrupt. So some people look at that as a negative thing. You look at that disrupt and you think, and that's why I think some traditional insurers, some people have been in the industry for a long time, pre this insurtech boom, sometimes take that word disrupt and like I say, have negative connotations towards it. I personally do not, but even if you didn't use the word, it's talking about evolution, right? And it's taking the majority of the insurtechs I meet are not from an insurance background. For some, that can be a disservice, right? But for others, I think it's really refreshing. Because they're bringing a lot of skill sets and a lot of viewpoints and approaches that are different to us, not to disrupt in a negative way. It's not to your old news, we're the new school and we're going to make you redundant. If you look at it as my door is wide open to get better and to improve and to lower my cost base and to distribute my product to wider than I do currently, and like you say, digitalize and make my product better, then that should be the most welcoming introduction you have. And that's what I love about the Lloyds Lab, is it's connecting a lot of us to these really incredibly talented people that want to do business with Lloyds, not to disrupt Lloyds in a negative way, but to improve the sort of products that we're offering our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it does is, if you think about it, sitting in an underwriting organization, the whole area of sort of digitalization, insurtech is probably quite scary to a number of people. And what you can't do is take somebody out of a conventional role, put them in an office and give them a label saying you're now in charge of insurtech in our office, because it just won't work. But I think what's interesting is the huge opportunities to partner with these companies. You don't need to create your own internally. If you're smart, you can partner with these technology companies, and you can provide each other with tremendous skill sets, which can help both sides of the strategic relationship. So I see there being a lot more partnership. I mean, if we look at the lab, Chris, without mentioning, I mean, Lloyd's are just now opening up cohort 8 of applications for, to come in for insurtechs to come in and utilize the lab. And I think that's one of the best things that, we've developed in recent years. And if you look at some of the successful businesses that have come out of that, I mean, you've got things like emissions accounting platform, which monitors carbon emissions across supply chains. And why is that important? It's important for commodity traders, but also it's being built out so that, the marine side of the industry can use that. So really, really exciting development there. You've got another one, which is, an IVF analytics platform. And people may say, what on earth is that? Well, that's using AI and machine learning to assess parents' ability to conceive. And if they fall in a certain bracket around data, they can buy an insurance if they're unable to conceive. So you look at, those are two very, very different things. And they're just two examples that have come out of, so far 7 very successful cohorts at Lloyd's. Tremendous sort of range of products which are coming through and being tested in the lab. And what I love about the lab is it provides a platform for, I think there's something like 25 underwriters now participating in the Lloyd's platform, the product launch pad. And those underwriters have access to those products, those capabilities, which they can either utilize or set up strategic relationships, or I presume effectively employ at their choice. That's a fantastic innovation hub. And, I'd love to see the Lloyds Lab go on to steroids and, be even bigger and greater than it is already. So, very, very exciting area of development.
I'm a big fan of the Lloyds Lab. I think the guys running there do a fantastic job. The cohorts are always incredibly impressive. And I think about some that don't even get through to be in the cohort. And I've been there on a few pitch days and been almost a little bit disappointed because there's a couple that I wanted to get through that didn't make it. Such is that barrier to entry. And I hope those people that weren't successful will apply for obviously the next cohort, because I think there's some amazing ideas. What I love about it is how Lloyds have put it all together, though, because you've got the Lloyds Lab that marries up very well then with the product launchpad. So yes, that particular person or that team of people that are going through the lab have their mentors from 1, 2, maybe 3 syndicates, but then that product launchpad gives them access to the broader marketplace, or a lot more syndicates to help them get the capacity they need to launch said products. And then you've got Lloyd's ICX initiative, which is allowing syndicates to allocate a certain amount of their capital and allow them some growth to actually put these in the business plans. And I think one of the challenges for innovation that I've spoken to a couple of my colleagues, in the US marketplace, is that when there is a hardening marketplace, a lot of businesses will say, well, we'll stick to our knitting. We're going to stick to the core portfolio. We don't need to go off into new areas of innovation, new products and new risks, because we're getting the rate adequacy we want from our core book of business. There's not that need to explore other avenues for revenue. And what I love about Lloyds is even with that hard market, we're still trying to push the innovation because we know that's the future and this hard market won't last forever. So in that softer cycle, we'll have these products, we'll be leading the way for new and emerging trends. And that's going to get us that new wave of growth and that new wave of client base. So I'm a big fan of all the things that we've been doing on the innovation side. I wish maybe some of our broking partners in the US would know a bit more about that and really tap into that more, and maybe even put it into their broker to say, look, Chris, I've got this new opportunity, could be perfect for your ICX code, something like that, and really tap into it and push that innovation a bit harder.
Yeah. I agree. I think the one thing that frightens people, there's a lot of insurtechs out there which really don't provide any value. So I think one of the challenges companies have is maneuvering through and really sifting through so many of them, and really trying to evaluate which ones are going to provide genuine value to their business. Because at the end of the day, it's timely, it's costly. It can take an awful lot of resource to go out there, and there's a huge number that start up every month. So I appreciate it is a challenge, and that's why I think the lab offers a great opportunity for companies that don't want to do that themselves.
I was about to say, let the lab do your triage.
Yeah, let the lab do the triage. But I think that's right. So I think it's a great way for those who don't. I mean, we've set up a business at GC to absolutely do that for a lot of our US customers, and it's been a really helpful way to help them navigate through that. So it's something that we're keen to help clients navigate through.
And I suppose that one thing that we talk about innovation a lot, and we talk about insurtech, new risk, emerging risks. I think one of the space that I also like talking about is just this. The world is changing so rapidly, no more so in COVID times. And you have what we might call traditional risks, right? Or traditional classes of business, traditional companies, if you want to call them, older companies, essentially, making big transitions themselves and changing their operating model, going through a digitalization, huge topic of ESG and people transitioning to net zero. In your opinion, there's a lot of obviously focus on new products and new innovation. Do you think insurers, Lloyds and non-Lloyds, are doing enough in that helping with emerging risks for the more traditional companies?
I think it's interesting. I think Lloyds came out with a statement around ESG, and it came out with its first ESG report. And I think there was a lot of negativity from people around, Lloyds is saying that immediately we can't touch anything that's sort of carbon related, which is not correct. I think the most important thing with all these industries, so you've got to help clients transition. You cannot just switch a switch overnight and say anybody's dealing with fossil fuels they can't get insurance now. It can't just happen overnight. And I think the other thing that's really important to understand is a lot of the businesses, so a lot of these sort of brown energy companies that have been classed as, the dirty mines, whether it's the Adani mine that everybody, hears about in Australia, one of the dirtiest mines in the world. But one shouldn't forget that these companies are actually investing the money to transition to green energy, and they're doing an awful lot of the research. So, it's all very well to say just, block them, don't give them coverage, but at the same time, these are the companies that are spending, millions on transitioning into green energy and doing a lot of the research. So I think we've got to be careful, how we go about making comments around that. And as I say, the most important thing is we have to help companies transition from brown energy into green energy and to clean energy. And again, there's a lot of really exciting work going on around that. So, we're working on, there's already been, the first ESG syndicate at Lloyds. We've got another one in the pipeline, which is very exciting. So I think we're going to see a lot more movement towards ESG related businesses. And we also see it around, capital. There's, companies looking to put a certain percentage of capital into ESG related businesses. So again, another really exciting area of the business, which I think will get bigger and bigger over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that flexibility and and that support over longevity to help people through transitions is so important. I think one of the and you actually touched on this right at the start of this discussion when you talked about how millennials are interacting with products and services very differently to what we're used to. I think that's a fascinating concept. We talk a lot in my team about usage-based insurance, because when you are insuring a traditional business, maybe it's a FTSE 100 company, a Fortune 500 company, whatever it is, when you come up for these renewals, let's say, you're normally then saying, right, okay, their revenue is up 10%, or it's maybe down 10%. They're normally asset-based businesses, so it's not like you can expand or treble in size overnight unless you're going through an acquisition. So underwriting that on a sort of flat non-usage basis kind of makes sense, because you're going to be in around a certain percentage that's not too great from where they were the year previously. When you're looking at some of these new marketplace type risks, and when you're looking at app-based businesses or these new products and services that are embracing that subscription model rather than sell your product service, I'll lease you one, usage is huge. And we saw in COVID that usage can change rapidly, right? Delivery companies just trebling, quadrupling in size, and other companies really shrinking back. And I think it's a great area of flexibility where if insurers can transition and get away from this fascination with ownership, you own a car, you buy insurance, you own a home, you buy a home insurance, and embrace this utilization like you were talking about earlier, and on a per minute, per hour, per mile, per night, or per transaction, whatever it is. I think there's a huge amount of innovation there that can only be achieved, though, which I think is, again, a better product for our clients, with a digitalization. And we need to be able to embrace that digitalization to deliver that type of product. So I think, again, an area of innovation that can happen with our current portfolio is just taking that product and evolving it over time with the market trends we're seeing.
I think, Chris, if you look at the personal line side, and not that I sit in that area at all, but I think it's really interesting now, if you look at talking to some of the companies that are really trying to future-proof their business, it's all around, especially when you go out to the customer and ask them for information. An awful lot of the information you can pick up now without going to the customer. Agreed. And utilizing that data. And then when it comes to actually facing the customer, you can reduce down the sort of huge number of pages of questionnaires down to maybe 3 questions.
Yep.
So you can deliver a much quicker solution and a better analyzed risk in a much faster time. And I think, again, we're seeing the personal lines area of the industry shift tremendously. Obviously, reinsurance
massively
is a bit complex, but there are different areas, as you said, verticals, where AI and technology are going to become critical in analyzing risk better and providing faster solutions. So
and I do think that is probably one of the biggest shifts we'll see in the next few years. And it could even shift, so a lot more personal lines business shifts into a commercial setting and then becomes something that the Lloyd's market have a big appetite for, I would hope. And because I think what you'll see is not just, embracing a digital type product, right, that may be usage based, and really, tapping into that customer experience, right? So getting data from a platform rather than asking people to fill out very tedious insurance based forms and read incredibly complicated wordings and products that people don't understand. That's a product simplification is a whole different a whole different topic for discussion. But the key for me is that embedded insurance. You're starting to see companies say insurance cannot be a blocker to what I want to achieve. It needs to be an enabler. So can I go out, buy an insurance product for my customers, for my clients, my marketplace? We've seen Tesla talk about creating their own insurance product for their users because they've struggled to buy insurance. If you can take that insurance product, build something, collaborate with the brokers and insurers to create something for that whole business, and anyone interacts with your products and services, you embed it within your products and services, you're not selling to individuals anymore. So it's not really a personal lines product. It's a commercial lines product that you're getting a fleet of vehicles, a fleet of drivers, a whole collective bundled premium, and you can do a load with the data and the pricing of that risk. So huge opportunities for me where we sit seeing that shift from personal lines to commercial lines through embedded insurance. Massive innovation there.
I just look at, watching what your business, the information you're getting. So, if you think back to how you'd price the risk, it would just be on a journey. Whereas now, as you say, you've got so much data now. It's all around the driver, how the driver drives, what time of the day he drives, what the weather conditions are like, which route he's going. You look at that. And that's just in your area. But if you take, the amount of data that you're getting for that specific insurance risk and move that into so many different other verticals, you can see how things are changing so dramatically. But I think the one thing we should come back to, and technology is fantastic, digitalization is fantastic. We shouldn't forget the value of the person-to-person interaction and face-to-face meetings and everything else that our industry is built up on. We are a person-to-person industry, or we have been a person-to-person industry. We shouldn't forget how important those relationships are going forward. There are certain products that can be done very easily digitally, but there are other discussions that absolutely need a face-to-face. And there's so much value. If you look at what the pandemic's done, I think it's accelerated digitalization and certainly accelerated the Lloyds program probably by up to about 5 years. If you think, 2 months before the pandemic hit, if anybody had said, right, the industry's got to go into a remote working, next month, the whole industry would have been up in arms saying, you must be kidding, there's no way we can do this. But guess what? We literally almost did it overnight, and everything worked. Covers got placed, deals got done, acquisitions happened, capital got raised, all successfully. So it proves it could be done. However, sitting at home, and when you come back to do face-to-face meetings, there's so much more you do gain out of those discussions when you're face-to-face. So there is a role still for that face-to-face interaction. And this is where I think, we look at the room now, and I know a lot of people have questioned about what's the future of the room. And sadly, if you come into the city, if you come into EC3, those of you who are not in London at the moment, for those of you maybe outside London, you come into the business district, and I know it's the same in downtown New York, and I'm sure in other places. It's pretty quiet at the moment, and it's sad to see, but I have to believe that there will be a need and a desire to come back and be a lot more face-to-face again in the future. That doesn't mean you halt digitalization. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I think they both play a very important role. And, just talking to some of our younger employees, they're desperate to come back. They're bored of sitting in their bedrooms on Zoom calls all day. They miss the social life. They miss the social interaction. And the other thing which is so important is how do they build their relationships, which are going to be so important for them in the future. So I think, I think the industry's worked remarkably well, but I think it's a time to try and get people back to, some sort of face-to-face communication, whether it's a 3 and 2 or however companies are going to operate. But I think that's an important part that we shouldn't just forget.
To touch on the room, I know there's been people talking about if we can operate without it, can we save costs by closing the room? I think that would be a real shame. And I think it would be something that would be at a detriment of our marketplace. I think that face-to-face interaction is something that we've all valued. And I think spurs that innovation, that collaboration, that co-creation, brokers, underwriters, and syndication, which is so important for Lloyds. I do think there's an opportunity to rethink what the room looks like and how it functions. I like the layout of the Lloyds Lab, right? I like the way that it has this collaborative working space that people can huddle around. For me, and the way that my team operate within ibott, because it's very data driven, in any discussion that we're having on an account, it's typically got underwriters involved, actuaries involved, data scientists involved, maybe compliance, and some claims people. And we're all having that collaborative discussion, which doesn't really work in the box setting as it sits today. So I do think there's an opportunity to revamp that and have more collaborative working spaces. But I'm absolutely passionate about keeping that face-to-face interaction in a central place, because I do want the syndication to continue. We're working with a company in the Lloyds Lab at the moment, and we're trying to create a Lloyds facility where we'd have quite a lot of capacity targeted at a specific area of the business. That's going to require more capacity than just Apollo. And so I need that collaboration to be able to speak to other syndicates, to take them on a journey with us, to create an innovative solution that's going to be exactly what our clients want. I'd hate to see that fall away.
I think if you look at Lloyds, and I'm totally agree with you, I'd love to see the Lloyds Lab on steroids. I would love to see, if we're going to change Lloyds, why don't we just put the whole of the ground floor as the Lloyds Lab? There we go. There's my controversial view, because I think it would be a great thing for people to see, to come in and see what's going on around innovation. It's exciting. It's where people want to be. It's the future of this business. So, push that lab onto steroids. Ed Gaze is probably listening and having heart failure at this very moment. No pressure on you, Ed.
He's probably fist pumping knowing it.
But I'd love to see, a lot more opportunity, expand those cohorts, bring in super smart young people who've got different ideas and, put them to the test. Try things, fail fast, but we've got to do a lot more of that in this industry. And I think if you look at, Lloyds has been incredibly successful, over its 350 odd years of history. It's continually been regenerating itself. And I think there's a huge opportunity. It's the center of intellectual capital. It's the only face-to-face trading market left in the world. People love coming to Lloyds. London, you take the city of London, London is a tremendous center of a whole different, whether it's the center of, insurtech, it's the center of, finance, a lot of things. And I think to close the Lloyds room would be, I think, a huge mistake. I think people want that collaboration you talk about. It's been a great area to pull together capacity, to put, huge volumes of capacity together on complex risks, and just as a general meeting place. So, yeah, I'd love to see maybe reevaluate how the building's used, but absolutely keep it. It's a key part of, I think, the London market.
Yeah, very much agreed.
So thank you, Vicky and Chris. I want to jump in here with a number of questions from the audience. The first one, do you think a Lloyds innovation outpost in the US would help with socializing the innovation capabilities of the Lloyds market? So someone's asking about a outpost in the US for the innovation lab.
First of all, we shouldn't call it an outpost. The US is a massively important market to Lloyds and to London. And if you look at the amount of business that comes in from the US and Canada, it's a huge proportion of business. And I think what we want to do is see a lot more business emanating from the US. So focus is to grow that business. So I think that absolutely would be a great thing to do, because certainly talking to my colleagues in the US, there's a huge amount of innovation going on in the US. And you look at some of the new companies that have emerged, whether it's the Hippos, the Lemonades, and a whole host of others. So I think absolutely we should create a similar platform in the US and bring those ideas into London, and basically the London ideas go to the US, because they're going to be different clients with different requirements. So we should be collaborating a lot more. We as a company wish to collaborate a lot more. Lloyd should collaborate a lot more around that as well.
I I think for me, if people are talking about Lloyd's and innovation in the same sentence, it's going to be bring a big smile to my face, obviously, right? I think one of the key parts when you think of innovation, when you think of insurtech, new forms of distribution, new products, the key part of that is regulation. And that regulation differs in every different marketplace, right? So a product that would be successful in the US may need to be pretty different to the same product if you want to launch that in Europe. So absolutely, I see those hubs being territory specific. And I think that's really key. Intellectual capital within Lloyd's is when you come to the marketplace, you can come to the marketplace and say, right, I want to launch my product here in the US. And you can speak to a certain line underwriter, depending on the class, who is an expert on the US market. Then easily be pointed in the right direction from the Lloyds Lab to, well, this is the person who's an expert in the Asian market or the European market. And that's the beauty of Lloyd's, right? It's full of experts on very different areas of the business. And I think we should absolutely be harnessing that. And, certainly when I joined the industry, you'd see that. I remember being fascinated when the brokers being pointed to the market leaders, all these different classes, and just feeling lost about how everyone knows where everyone sits and who's who. And that is something we shouldn't lose. And again, another advocate for keeping the underwriting room and keeping that collaboration. So absolutely, thought leadership type innovation, territory specific. We want people to think, I've got an innovative risk, I want to go to Lloyd's because that's where I'll be best served.
So on that point, another question from the audience saying, you guys talk a lot about Lloyds Lab, which is really exciting. But the person was saying they have seen a lot of progress from the insurtech, but it's primarily on claims and the like. So he is saying he hasn't seen much in advancement of complex or violence risk space. So are we seeing more from the complex risk perspective, from the innovation perspective?
I mean, I can go first if you want me. I've definitely seen a lot of innovation on complex risks. I've seen some amazing work going on and being discussed at the Lloyd's product launchpad. Certainly some of the products with reputational harm are really exciting. I think that's a massive emerging risk for businesses that have struggled to find a way to sort of transfer that type of risk. Autonomous vehicles is something that we're passionate about working on. We're also working in ibott on products to do with micromobility, so e-scooters. They're pretty tough risks and complex and take a really unique approach. And that's the sort of thing that's happening in Lloyd's across the industry. I know people are looking at cryptocurrency type products and all sorts of different advancements. There's been some, I'd say, poor press regarding Lloyd's appetite for cyber. We're not closed for cyber. I'm sure Vicky could talk more on that.
I was just going to say, Chris, I mean, I think there's a misconception here around cyber at Lloyd's, and I'd like to hope I can maybe sort of give a bit of clarity on that. I think the concern is that people really understand the potential systemic risk of cyber. So I think Lloyd's is totally open to cyber if people can demonstrate that A, they really understand the risk, and B, that they've got a demonstrable track record of cyber. So if you've got strong underwriters who really understand that risk, they're going to be given the ability to grow and expand, or businesses that really can demonstrate that they understand the business. And we're working with a couple of new cyber related businesses to bring them into Lloyd's. So to say that Lloyd's is anti-cyber is incorrect. What it's anti is people who really don't understand the product and want to expand it. So I think there needs to be real clarity around that. If they do understand, they've demonstrated, they'll be allowed to grow the business. And there are a number of different sides of cyber. So I think, that's a key point to get across. Again, a really exciting area of the business to be in.
Absolutely. So the time is running out, but I would just take one more question from the audience for you two, just regarding the model of distribution. So they were saying, are there any plans at Lloyd's for a more sophisticated distribution model from your opinion?
Well, distribution is a key part. I think, again, it comes down to digitalization. So I think, brokers should look at, the whole digitalization program that's going on with Blueprint as an enabler. It should be seen as an enabler for their business, to enable them to service their clients better, to give a faster distribution, and to bring products back to Lloyd's or to the market quicker and faster. So I think that the answer to that is yes, the model is changing. I think everybody's got to look at cutting costs. And I think that will impact the whole distribution chain. So being able to do things quicker, faster, digitally will change the distribution model. But I think that's what has to be done to cut those costs out of the business. It cannot go on with sort of expenses at 40% or more. And we've seen that on, a lot of the delegated authority where, commissions are going through the roof. And that's just ultimately driving really poor results. So I think there needs to be a real focus on the distribution chain. And I think that's what brokers are doing. And as I say, digitalization should not be a fear to them, that they're going to be removed if they're providing service, but they've got to demonstrate they provide true value to the customer, and they should see it as an enabler as opposed to, something that's trying to cut them out of the chain.
Chris, any more comments on that?
I was just going to say that the value add point, I think as long as everyone's adding value within that, insurance life cycle, then it can work. As soon as that is, the commissions or the acquisition costs are out of balance with the value being added, that's when problems are going to happen. We talk a lot about connecting experts with experts, right? And we talk about when you are going to find a distribution partner, whether it's a delegated underwriting authority or it's a specific broking house that you really want to develop a product with. We spend a lot of time co-creating and collaborating there, adding a huge amount of IP from the Lloyds network and Apollo, obviously, and they adding value. If then you get turned around and say, okay, we're going to put 30% commission on this, then all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute, my margin's here and I've just added just as much IP as you've managed here. So I think there's got to be any broker, any distribution partner, any insurtech can't expect insurers not to have a combined ratio of 100% and expect to be a long-term partnership. So I think there's been a bit of growing up and we see that in this cycle. I think it will continue now. That people are being real about what acquisition cost. It has to be controlled. It has to be long-term. It has to be sustainable, and it's got to be reflective of the value. So, yeah.
Well said. To conclude the session, I know both of you guys are very passionate on raising young talents, and there's some young talents in today's audience. There's one question actually from a law student. He's saying, I'm studying law at the moment in the US. So any final thoughts to share with young talents in the audience or outside the audience about insurance as a career path?
Okay, well, I'm going to kick off because this is something I'm very, very passionate about. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I can honestly say to you that this is probably one of the most dynamic industries out there. Anybody who hears that, insurance is a really boring, dull thing, and if you're not in the industry and you're listening, you probably think or imagine that you're a door-to-door salesman selling some sort of really dull product. Believe me, this industry has everything to offer anybody. It's exciting, it's changing. You've heard about some of the new technology. The world would not exist without insurance and reinsurance. Everything you touch, everything you do needs insurance. So if you think of all the different areas, whether it's space, whether it's aviation, whether it's marine, transport, sharing economy, casualty, property, cyber, nuclear, it goes on and on and on, and there is something for everybody. Certainly speaking for me, I've had the most incredible journey, traveled all over the world, met amazing people, super smart people. No one day has ever been the same. You listen to young people who go into law or go into banking, and the ones that go into industry and insurance, and the ones who go into insurance love it. It's sociable. You meet great people. It's a phenomenal industry, and I think it's given me everything I've got, and I love it.
Could not agree more, Chris.
I am banned from speaking about insurance with any of my friends that are not in insurance, which now I've whittled down to about 3 people because I love speaking about insurance. So,
so sad, aren't we? It's so sad. We sound like a pair of saddos.
But the reason I love it is because of the diversity. I will meet somebody from a different walk of life, from a different industry, from a different background, from a different skill set, pretty much every day, meeting with different clients from all around the world. There's no dull day in insurance. There's a new challenge. There's something new to think about, something, that's put on your desk that you didn't expect. So I don't ever feel the Monday blues. I never dread work on a Sunday. And if you can say that, then there's a lot of Mondays in your life. That's a pretty good thing.
That's amazing. You know, we've been all drinking the insurance Kool-Aid. That's a very obvious fact. Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you so much, Chris, for your leadership, for your insight, for your inspirational, share with us what you are doing, what you're looking forward to with us. We can't thank you enough for what you do for us. For next week, the audience, look forward to having you in 2 weeks' time. We have Nada Rosie and Kate Stilwell, two of the experts in parametric solutions, coming on stage in 2 weeks on Tuesdays with Lloyds. In the meantime, let's stay connected and let's keep in touch. Thank you all so much. Have a nice day.
Thanks very much. Great to talk
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.